If any of you have any doubt, anybody, anywhere, any doubt as to the apparent everyday growing importance of information, and it actually being more, not that the ordinary intelligence understands it, but it is becoming more than simply facts. It is not synonymous anymore with facts. And the way we use it here is certainly not synonymous with facts. But the whole expanding importance of information in a wide range that I'm not going into. This was just a throwaway introduction to some of this that happened to come to my attention again. If you have any doubt, consider such things as a sizable section of a national news magazine just in the last week or so was devoted more or less to, based around a well-known news anchor person, as they call it. That is, somebody that sits there and reads what somebody wrote that happened today, but a wide range, seeking quotes regarding the fact that this particular news anchor person, which happened to be of the Distaff persuasion, had posed for what they said was sexy photographs. And so now her newsworthiness, her validity seems to be in some doubt. And it went on for several pages. Millions of dollars if you had bought 2 pages in this national news magazine devoted to this. I'm sure there must have been a slow news week to start with, but think about it a second. Because this is done seriously, and it's been going on. This was not just something brand new, of course. But a raging debate over, has this person lost their trustworthiness? Have they lost the real ammunition, the public acceptance, the trust? To what? To sit there and read the fucking news. Because this woman, it could have been a man. What if he got arrested for the 3rd time drunk driving? Then wait a minute, I'm not sure I'm going to watch that network anymore. How can I be sure that he's reading out actually what they wrote down that happened today? Or, I'm not going to watch that woman present the news because she lowered her standards enough. She posed for kind of sexy photographs. Not pornography, but just kind of suggestive, just kind of stuff that you'd expect a movie star. But by God, she reads the info, the news. And I just can't watch it anymore. What, you don't trust that she can read anymore? Think about it. They're not making the news. They're reporting. And they don't even get out as they used to. And they didn't actually go out and they send in a telephone report live, or now from some sort of Skylink to a satellite, that yes, here I am in Lebanon or Afghanistan, sending back a report. They're shooting now. They're sitting there in New York reading a piece of paper. They're reading the newspaper to you in a sense. But I don't know whether I trust this person. I think I'll throw another... Think about it. For you people on tape, this is not an attack on anything. On the news people, sexy photographs, anything. That's not it. Do you see what has already become part of the everyday wired up intelligence of humanity? Especially the more you're in the information part, spatially, of the planet. Western Europe, us, and very shortly, probably next week, everybody. But that there are serious discussions now, raging debates, millions of dollars at stake. They may fire the person on the basis that they got arrested for drunk driving, or that they posed for photographs that we cannot imagine Walter Cronkite laying in his boxer shorts trying to look sexy. But this person did it, and so they may have lost any news credentials they may have had. Think about it. Because it is now part of, it's not just the facts. Because you've always had the king or somebody somewhere, as long as we've had history, you've had the king, the powers that be, if not the people, saying, somebody go find out what's going on over in the next city. Find out what's going on with those people we defeated 2 years ago. We hadn't heard anything. Find out what's going on. Or what was that loud noise? And they come back. So well, down the road last night, a volcano erupted. But then it has gradually turned into not just that the messenger is as important as the news, or that the messenger is more important than the news. There is now less and less of any distinction, because it's not the news, it's not the facts that the volcano erupted, or that these people are over there arming again. It's more than that. It's not the facts, and it's not the messenger that brought the facts. It's now a whole expanded flow of energy that is normally referred to as information. And it's not all that specific. Think about the people. And they're not just the people writing, there's not just reporters and critics of the media. It's many people, just ordinary citizens now, that would take the idea of the messenger of the news, the reporter, as being in some way so important that it could affect not only the information, but it might affect the way that you try and receive the information. But even more than that is the point, if you sit there and turn on the news each night or read the paper, if you could bring your own intelligence down to a very fine, selfish, but rational point, what does it seem to matter in your lifetime? Now, not discounting, because we have sketched out enough maps here for you to try and see the universal connection of everything. But insofar as there's still, after whatever it is now, of 30 years of armed, everyday conflict in Northern Ireland, assuming you don't have any relatives there, you can read about it, or you can hear somebody on the news say, well, this is the, whatever it is, the 37th anniversary. We wanted to mark it again of this bloody conflict, brother against brother, the Irish against Irish, of them killing each other over that which should be a balm to society, religion. Tut tut. And inside your wiring system responds along and goes tut tut. If you stopped right quick though, as far as you can tell, up until now, what direct effect has that had on your life? None. You're going to live another what, 20 or 30 years based upon the past, which you can use in the ordinary sense. Do you foresee it actually having anything to do with you personally? Probably not. And yet, you want to respond to it nowadays, of yes. What I want you to see is the information, as it's called, being flooded with information everywhere, from billboards to ads to the news itself. How much of it has a direct effect? It all has an effect. I repeat one more time now. We know that. Because everything is just like jelly on the plate. That is, a little of it can't shake by itself. It's all, if a little of it, which those of you that know anything about good old time blues, sometimes jelly was a nom de plume for other kinds of activity, but if you got a nice big plate of jelly and a little of it shakes, of course it all shakes. Just like a nice sized woman was what the blues used to say. Don't blame me. So we know that, or you're supposed to know that. And yet, back to the point of there you sit reading or hearing somebody read you the news, they say, today all records have been broken because today in Lebanon 117 civilians, or at least people out of uniform, were killed on an individual basis. Not a bomb, but just of the constant shooting going on in that poor, ravaged city. And you may go, oh my God, Jesus. Ooh. What does that mean? Assuming you don't have any relatives there. What effect does that actually have on you? The point is none. Not immediately, not directly. So you got that, but now the expansion I want you to try and ponder is not just that the information, the majority of it has no direct impact on you, which should be enough right there, but then the expansion is such that people are concerned over somebody reading the news that's of no direct consequence to you, of being concerned over, can I trust this person? Is that the woman who posed in that with her thing off the shoulder here, kind of looked coy? Is that her reading this news about Lebanon? Very suspicious. I don't know. It's double-barreled. And we're not pointing out, so I'm not doing a satire, because we're not attacking folly and vice, because there is none. But I want you to see that there is a unspecified. It has not been noted. It has not been notched upon the gun handle of the intellectual critics of life already. But that there is an expanded, rather vague, sooner or later, as it happens in ordinary life, it will begin to be noted in some way, just by ordinary consciousness. But right now it's not really noted the expanded importance and the role that the information flow is playing. To the point of people being concerned, raging intellectual battles over should this person still be on network news. That is, sit there and read me the newspaper, or parts of it, after what he or she did. I don't know. It's as yet unnoticed, but I want you to see that there is an unspecified, I could say creeping, but it was creeping before we started talking about it. Now it's already speeded up, of this into everyone's intelligence. The importance of being up to date, the importance of information, and now the importance of the source of it. Not whether it's reliable or not, but whether I want the information from that person. Do I trust her reading the news? Why don't she move over and let that other guy read the news? So they have a vote. You can mash a button, they send it to the network right there live, and the majority of the people watching say, no, we don't trust her anymore. So she picks up her news, hands it to this guy, and she leaves, and he comes on, the same thing that she was reading, he reads, and they say, how do you like that? And everybody across the country mashes a button, and 99% say, now we feel much better. Think about it. And she handed him what she was reading. All right. So much for an intro. I want to pick up and see this. The reason I thought the intro is perhaps you will garner in a second. Those of you into garnering. Is where I was going to try and point your attention. Tied to something that we were talking about last time that we were taping. Some of these maps that I pull out and sketch out, the stuff I make up, I mean the stuff that I talk about. You remember the example that I used for another purpose, but the one about giving people what they put out. And the direct, inescapable, always constant impact it will have on somebody else if you do an imitation of them. Just an outright, just imitate them. Not a satire, not even a burlesque, not a parody. Just try and do them. And it will stop people. And at that time, I also took some pains. That was the general thrust of me bringing up last time we were taping, to point out that although it could be explained as some kind of new psychological dynamic, an interpretation I could give psychologically, which I did, I said that that was not the point. Now to bring the interview back up to date, when I said that a more simplistic explanation and analyzation of this working could be this, that if I were playing psychologist, I could say, all right, I tried that, or we took a bunch of students after you told me that and we tried it. I'm playing psychologist now. We tried it and you're right. It worked each and every time. Every time we did this to unsuspecting people that had enough of a personality presence that they could act in such a way that we could identify that they were aggressive, they were hostile, they were shy, that if somebody did them, if we told a student to go do it, the people, we had them all wired up and cameras behind one-way mirrors, and everybody went, ooh. And so my colleagues and I thought about this, and we understand now why it works. We already knew why it worked, we just never even confronted this example. And their explanation will be, as I told you last time, they would say, well, here's what's going on. Let us say somebody who is real hostile, that every time they want something done, with their employees, their employer, their sex partners, their children, anytime they want something done, if they say, would you do so-and-so, and if they have any suspicion that this is not going to have everybody hopping right to it, they'll say, come on, damn it, do it. Now, I'm not just asking, I'm telling you, do this. And I'm not going to tell you again. All right. Now, when you do that back to them, and they go, ooh, we now, after compiling statistics and having a seminar, we have figured out why this works. Why it works is, that kind of aggressive, pushy behavior is what those people's mothers, fathers, whoever raised them, their adult influences, that's the way they made these children behave. They would say, eat your food. And if they didn't eat their food, they'd say, I told you to eat your food, damn it. I'm not going to tell you again. Eat your food. I'm not fooling around. And the kid had to eat his food. He'd get scared. So he grew up, and all the time they'd pop notes. I told you to clean up your room. You come home with another C, you're going to get it. I'm not fooling around. You don't do that. So the kid grows up. And this is what boxes him in. This is what drives him, that his father, let's say, is the one who just did that. And so it would make him hop too. He grows up, and as he starts trying to deal at school with his little peers. Even if you don't live around a marina, most people have little peers. Then he would start when he would say, let me play with your ball or this new toy. And this other kid at school would go, no, I don't want to. He'd say, let me play with that toy, damn it. And he'd find out a bunch of kids would go, here, here. So, of course, some didn't, but never mind that. That's what statistics are for, because there's always the middle of the bell curve, and the other statistics, never mind them. But at any rate, then these psychologists would say, that is why now, if you do that back to them, it works. Because we should have realized it, that everybody's, if they have some sort of salient, or if you could describe some salient part of their personality and almost make them archetypical of some way, you say, well, he's a real pushy guy. Loudmouth and pushy. Then we should have realized, after you point out that trick and we saw it work, we should have realized that everybody is unconsciously broadcasting what it is when they were a child that made them toe the line, that got their attention, that was a 2x4 to their mule brain. That's what they're doing. So anybody that's pushy, what they're telling you, without knowing it, they're telling you, anybody that's a loudmouth and says, by God, do what I tell you. They don't realize, but what they're doing is say, that's the kind of stuff that works on me. Or else why would they be trying it? They'd have to be idiots. They would be less than normal. They're broadcasting. They don't realize it, but what they're saying is, being a loudmouth, being brash like this, makes me do what other people want, and so therefore I do it to you. So now they explained it, which is not incorrect. That's as good an analyzation as any for ordinary affairs. But you recall, I insisted, as I do many times, that forget that. I mean, I'll stop sometimes and point it out so that some of you do get a toehold somewhere, but that don't stop there. That's no explanation. Why, I'm about to ask you, do I insist that don't stop there? Why do I say, even though I can play their part and say, well, this is not a psychological syndrome of some kind, or I'm not offering you a psychological tool or trick or explanation. Now, I don't do that in some way to prove that I'm smarter than psychologists, or that I'm smarter than the in toto consciousness and intelligence of psychology or psychiatry. That's not the point. For me to say, well, I'm so smart, I can tell you what they would analyze this as, and then I do it and say, yeah, but there is a more complex reality beyond that. I do not do it to in some way say that I'm smarter than psychology. That's not it. But here is a very subtle crack. If you can take a peek. The useful operational difference between what I'm trying to get you to see, that at least to see there is a point beyond any psychological description, although it's valid, although you could stop there and say, well, that explains it. At that level, it is satisfying. But if you get beyond that level, you realize it is not satisfying, because what all ordinary intellectual analyzation and explanation does is reach an unrecognized dead end, which seems to be just the opposite. as I'll try to get you to see in a minute. Whereas me saying beyond that is something is the only place to find that is not a mental cul-de-sac. For instance, the explanation that I went ahead and did for psychologists is why my trick, that is, of giving people what they put out, will just stop them cold, and in fact, do it under conditions when you're wanting them to stop playing and transferring this kind of energy on you, it will do it. All you got to do is do it to them with the intention of don't do that to me, and they won't do that to you. They probably won't even want to be around you. They just don't know why. The explanation that I went ahead and played out for psychology, that the reason it works is the people are only doing to others, such as being pushy, they're only doing that because being pushy is what worked on them, and so that's the only game they know. That's the only psychological interaction of which they're capable with their fellow man. And so they do it. But do you understand that that is, although that sounds like it makes sense, and it does at the ordinary 3D spatial level right now. That is the psychological explanation for my trick. But think a second. Those of you who've got the ability to do so and belong here, think a second. That explanation, once you go past the point that it sounds verbally, aha, that sounds good. That if we were back to me playing the psychologist and they say, all right, we watch people do it, we tried it and it works, and then me and my colleagues figured out why, and here's why, and they tell you about everybody's broadcasting by their own behavior what it is that drives them, and so therefore they try to do it with other people, and if you do it to them, all you're doing is what their parents did originally and taught them to do, and of course it works. Period. Then they could look at me like, nice trick, but we understand how it works now. And so it sounds as though verbally, does it not, at that level that, well, yeah, okay, makes a lot of sense, that's kind of neat. I mean, it's all tied up. It is, if you belong in any kind of activity like this, it is supremely unsatisfying, and it would be unsatisfying to ordinary people if, for some reason, if you could do it, there would be no real reason to, but if you could push them intellectually, the psychologist I was playing, intelligence, ordinary intelligence that may have followed this, that heard me do it, if you push them a little bit further, they would recognize this is not satisfying. And here's why. It offers no possibility for change. And it sounds as though it's just the opposite. It offers no hope. Why? I told you it's a little subtle, but it's not all that bad. Just listen right. And so I'm trying to talk fast so you can listen fast. Or else you won't stop and try to figure it out, and you can't figure this out. There's nothing to figure out, it just is. The reason it is a dead end, the reason it would be unsatisfying even to ordinary intellects if you push them a little bit further, because those same kind of ordinary intellects, psychologists believe, as everybody's supposed to, in some kind of free will, that people can change, or else psychologists wouldn't be in the business of psychology. Or else they'd all be frauds, and we know they're not. Psychiatrists would be frauds. Well, they're not. Priests, rabbis would be frauds. You would be a fraud. Your parents. And people are not frauds. People have a hard time changing because of all these unconscious traumas and subconscious drives. But back to the description. So the psychologist and everyone else would say, all right, there's why it works. But now that we know why it works, people can change. That's why I'm a psychologist. That's why I like to study people. Or if he was a psychiatrist hearing this, he'd say, that's why I am in practice analysis, to help people change. But they're cutting out all possibility of change by taking psychological explanations as being it. I'm getting to it, the subtle part. It sounds as though they're still dealing on the basis of some kind of free will. But who are they addressing their analysis of my trick? Let's stick with that, about giving people what they put out and how it will just stop them. How it makes such an impact on people to do it. Their analyzation of it is addressing already totally wired up and soldered adults. They're falling back into another version of the sins of the father story. Because here's what they're saying. This guy is real aggressive. And now the psychologists had fooling my trick. They figured out why he's aggressive and why aggression on him always works. And not just aggression, of course. A real shy person. A real whiny person, if you act real shy and whiny to them, it'll do the same thing as being aggressive to an aggressive person. If you whine and moan, whoever you do that to, all you got to do is look and they'll go. The same way if the guy was aggressive. It just stops them inside. And they will go to some effort not to have to confront you again. And if they do, a little whine will start. And if you did it right, they'll go up, and then they don't know what to do because they're not going to do it to you, and they don't know why. Don't lose your place. The psychologist would be saying, all right, this person, this aggressive person, this real shy person, now that we've looked at your trick and thought about it in a certain way and have a psychological, a satisfying explanation for it, they're tacitly also saying the guy can't help himself. That's why he is real pushy and aggressive, because his father did it to him. I mean, we've talked to him. In fact, his father's still alive. We called him in. He agreed to come and talk to us. And if you think this guy's pushy, well, you know, his father makes this guy look like Eleanor Roosevelt, you know, without any deodorant or something. So follow this now. The psychologist, and I'm using psychologist as being a kind of mode of interpretation of local reality. It's not just one person. It's the kind of thought going on now. What they're saying is, well, this guy can't help being pushy like that. Now, we've already figured out why your trick works. That is, he's real pushy and aggressive because that's what his father did to him that made him jump, that drove him all through school. It's still driving him. The man's 40 years old and it's still driving him. That's why he acts like that. All right, where are they going to address their attempted help? Since we're dealing with free will, the psychologists became psychologists of their own free will. And so now we have these people, this one guy, let's say, but remember this one guy is whole lots of guys. This one guy is part of the human intelligence. This one guy is part of the chemical flow of all human intelligence. This one guy's intelligence is part of the body of life. So the psychologist is saying, well, this guy probably wouldn't want to be like that. We've talked to him, and he has bad memories of how pushy his father was with him. Where are they going to offer their help? All right, the man himself. Now maybe we can put him in analysis, and maybe if he lives another 20 years, maybe something will happen. But just the information now, from my trick, the psychologist says, now we got that. What are they going to do useful with that piece of information? It sounded satisfying. It sounded as though it were an explanation for my trick. It sounded like it was a new analysis of one aspect of human behavior, social intercourse, family affairs, family intercourse, figuratively speaking. Where are they going to address it? Well, now, wait a minute. All right, this guy's already got his problems. He's 40 years old. Maybe we can get him into analysis here, and some of us try to get him to overcome his shyness or his aggressiveness. But he's not really responsible. His father did it to him. Okay. Father's still alive. Here it is. Let's say the father's only 60. Still got his wits about him. Why don't we help the father? The father's the one that was so aggressive. The father's the one that did to this guy, right? Some of you must see where this is going. If you're dealing with ordinary intelligence, you don't want to see where it's going. Because it hurts. It takes effort. It's almost impossible, as simple as it is. So let's put the 40-year-old guy aside a minute. He's got a few more years. But how about the father? The father, in fact, shows a little interest since we got him to come in and participate with the experiment. And we talked to him several hours, some of our other colleagues. And he stuck around the campus here, and we put him up in the dorm. Why don't we try to do something with him? I mean, instead of the sins of the father, that is of him being so aggressive, so bullheaded, so mechanically macho and pushy with his poor son, that his son turned out this way, blah, blah, blah. But wait a minute, forget the son. Why don't we do something about the father? Why? Because then you have got to ask, how'd the father get like this? Then you almost got to fall back playing Abraham or one of the prophets about, well, the sins of the fathers are visited on the sons. You know, where'd the sins of the fathers come? Well, from their fathers. And where'd they come from? Well, from their fathers. You know, go away, boy, you're bothering me. That's what it amounts to. Do you understand? It is ultimately a dead end, and ultimately is only one step past wherever ordinary intelligence will take any explanation. So those that seem very satisfying, such as explained away, in a way that was satisfying to contemporary intelligence at that level, my example, my trick is explained away because everybody by their own behavior is telling you, they're admitting out loud and in action, they're admitting what it is that their parents did to them to drive them. And so now they got no other choice. All they can do is do this. So how is psychology, religion, any thought system, how are they going to save the world? All right, maybe that's asking too much. How are we going to treat the world? Since the world can be treated, obviously, we're talking about intelligence now, not medicine, not just the physiology of man, but the important stuff. How are we going to treat him? We got the information now. How are we going to treat him? When everything that happened to him right now, all of his shortcomings, all of his personal difficulties were visited upon him by his parents or whoever played the parental role. I'm just going, you understand that. I'm just going to say parents. That environment of his childhood is what has caused his, quote, problems now. If the source of his problems, such as his parents, are still alive, why do we not help them? Give them the benefit of this knowledge, of this information. Nobody ever considers that. It's simple. Why? This is not expanded enough to receive it. It is getting outside of local reality. It is getting into what really amounts to temporal matters. It is getting into the time element rather than the space element. Because the space element, you can bring the first guy, the son, the 40-year-old son, you can bring him in here and talk to him. You can bring in the father of this guy and talk to him, but you cannot talk to him spatially if you've got this local piece of information between you and the father which says his problem is due to you. And that's the end of it. Well, maybe you didn't mean to do it. I'm not saying that you just willfully tried to muck up his little personality, but there's no doubt after talking to you and after hearing him tell what happened, you're the one who did it. Case closed. Sentence finished. Because the ordinary intellect now is not wired up to receive any information that goes past that one generation. That goes past that first, apparently satisfying explanation. Because then you'd have to say, well, wait a minute. You know, to the son, wait a minute, we'll get to you in a minute. We feel for you, we understand your problem, especially after meeting your father. I understand. But wait a minute, you go take a coffee break a minute. Let us help you. How in the world did you get so pushy? I mean, what he told us, you hadn't denied it. And the old man says, no. No, I should have. You're right. I've had a terrible temper. And after hearing the explanation of you telling, you know, about that trick, and my son now treats his children that way, I can see it. He's treating his children. He treats his employees, that little business he's got, he treats them the same way I used to treat him. When things didn't go right or people just didn't do exactly what I wanted, I'd begin to holler, and I can see him doing it. So I can't deny it. I guess if you say so, you're a psychologist. If you say I did him some harm, I can't deny it. I didn't mean to, but maybe I did. Ordinary intelligence, that is the psychologist I'm playing now, does not ever say, well, my God, well, he's taking a break, we'll get to him. What in the world made you so aggressive and pushy? Something did. Ordinary intelligence cannot go past the first story. The first satisfying three-dimensional explanation, that is sentence, that this son, this daughter, is the way they are because of the father, because of the mother. That's it. When? All you got to do is ask what I'm doing now. All you got to do is ask ordinary intelligence, let's say a psychologist, say, well, look, something made his father that way. The psychologist, I said, well, yeah, I guess. Yeah. You know, his father's human. He's from the same planet, same genetic line. Something made him pushy. He didn't just get up one morning and decide, well, let's see, I think I'll knock the old lady up and have a child. And when he gets old enough to talk or to listen, I'm going to push that little rat ass around. I'm going to holler at him. I'm going to beat him around. That's the way I'll come here. Come here, woman, let's have a baby because that's what I want to do. The psychiatrist said, well, no, people don't do that. And if I said, well, you're trained to do this, why don't you show any interest in the generation one past What provoked the progenitors of this sick guy and this whole generation with problems to do that? And he would have to admit for a split second, well, you're right. That's a valid question. But notice that question does not arise. And it's for no psychological reason, by the way. And it's not for any professional reason. It's not for any evil intent on anybody's part. I went through all that to just really get to the opening sentence, and we're almost through for the night. Is I don't point out where there seems to be, if you follow my line of talk on any given night, to point out the shortcomings of society or psychology or economics or politics or anything, just for the sake that I can show that there's more going on. That's not it. But the subtle part I wanted you to recognize, not just depending upon you getting this at these tapings, but on your own, is the first original, the first story, the sentence, the idea, the information that comes out of the ordinary halls of life that sounds satisfying to everybody, or to everybody that's interested, and sounds satisfying at first blush to you. You listen, yeah? It is not satisfying. That's why it appears to have some finality. But all you got to do is go just 1 inch further, 1 second past that, and it is not satisfying. And this, what I'm telling you, is not conditional. It's not sometimes. It's never satisfying. It is always a dead end because it offers no hope. That's why they have to stop. That's why the ordinary intellect has to stop where it did, because if it stops before it gets to the point that it is a brick wall, there is no other possibility. We are locked into it. There's always that one final step, that one final look, that one final thought that you cannot proceed past. So you've got to stop at least one step, one iota, one letter, one word before where the intellect could go. And that's where it appears to reach some logical finality. But it does not. Contraire, which is possible in the 3D world, that things can be contraire. It's unsatisfying. Whereas if you go a little bit further, what would appear to be just the opposite, that is to follow the kind of descriptions I was giving, I was telling you last time, and now go beyond the psychological analyzation and explanation of my trick. You go past it, and you have got the only possibility of additional possibilities by recognizing what's going on now. Another way, let me try to point for you. Along such lines, there's these kind of maps and descriptions and pushes and hints. When you begin, you get to the point and you begin to see this kind of stuff yourself, it is a kind of unrecognized encouragement to do this for a few people. And at the first level is this, which many of you have already been through. I'm going to put some words on to help you perhaps. Is on the basis that, let's say, you suddenly realize on your own, although you've heard it talked about here perhaps many, many times, but you suddenly realize for yourself, for instance, another one of the areas we discuss tied to this, that there is no mortal environment outside of human genetics. That is, you cannot separate that this 40-year-old man is not now pushy because his father was pushy, period. That sounds like it explains it. Unless you erase the period, turn it into a comma, and try and push your interest in additional information. You try to push your interest in this matter right past that period, and it is no longer satisfying. It is a dead end, because what you're left with then, well, wait a minute, there is no explanation. Now I understand it. If you go one step further, it's nobody understands it. This is no answer. This is a trick. The encouragement, when you begin to see on your own, for instance, that there is no such thing in the ordinary world. There is no such thing as a mortal environment. That is not just the physical world, but the kind of environment that molds that which is singularly human, the personality and etc. There is no such thing outside the genetic wiring, the genetic patterns of all humans. That is, there is no way to explain this 40-year-old son being aggressive. Well, you try. You say, well, he's aggressive because now his father's alive, we've met him, we talked to him. It's because his father's aggressive. That was the environment under which he was raised, was this aggressive, exceedingly pushy, hostile father. That environment you got to expect, or you at least not be surprised he grew up this hostilely. Okay, what made his father so hostile? I ain't got time for that. I don't even want to hear about that. Because then you have gone past the environment that was not the environment. Well, yeah, it was his father. All right, well, tell me why his father was that way. No. You're trying to muddy it up. He is that way because of the environment, that hostile, aggressive environment of his father. Yeah, I heard that. But now, why was his father? No. I don't know. Let us say that you begin to suddenly see that. I know many times I can talk about it and you go, yeah, I can hear that. But you suddenly see it. There is an unrecognized encouragement. It's kind of like, I suggest, that many of you have already been through, you suddenly see something like that and it's like to yourself you can say, geez, if I can suddenly make that kind of gargantuan leap from my ordinary level of stupidity, mine and everybody else's, even educated people, to go beyond that and suddenly see this, hey, there is some hope. That's it. You don't need me or anybody to ever encourage you. It's on your own to realize, wow, something this simple, something this, in a more complex way, obvious, that no one else can see. The people I studied from, the people I did graduate work under, the leading authorities in this field, still discussing the pros, the cons, the even attempted middle ground of shaving statistical percentages as to how much of the environment really impacts upon a child's personality and how much of it, if any, might be heredity. And that you suddenly see it. It's not the point that you are now smarter. It's not the point that life is dumb. The point is, geez, I have all my life operated at that level. The world's leading authorities in this particular area operate on that level, and I can now see beyond that. That, you don't need voices speaking to you or the guides. That is the supreme encouragement. That if I can do that, I mean something that simple, but something that viscid, something that the rest of humanity is still struggling with, a kind of mental flypaper, and they can't see, nobody knows what's going on. They say they do, and when I listen to them at that level, they can say, well, based upon the latest statistics, it's no longer an either-or situation. It's not simply that environment causes all of the bumps and the grooves in the human personality, nor is it simply that, well, it's just all genetic. No, we've made, thank God we're beyond that kind of outdated thinking. Because what we realize now, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that sounds like real progress, you know, if you're operating at that level, doesn't it? You had some interest in it that, well, we don't have it all down now. We're not sure of the percentages. But it's obviously a little bit of each. We're trying to narrow it down. It's not a little bit of each. And it's not either or. But if you see it, then you realize that it is truly a gargantuan quantum leap for you, for any person, to see beyond that. Because it's not necessary, and I keep saying it's not necessary, on the basis that you seeing it's not going to change anything in life, not right now. And you seeing it, of course, if you see it, you would simultaneously know not to do this. But if you see it, you're not going to rush to Stanford or North or South Carolina or Princeton or Yale and try to tell somebody. There's nothing to tell. But if you see it, it is like the ultimate unknown encouragement. That if I can do that, if I can see that, then there is some hope. Whereas if you stay at the level of ordinary information, there is no hope. It's just that people intellectually don't realize it. Now, I'm not saying no hope for you people on tape in some spiritual way that you're all done for, because you're not. But insofar as that kind of information, that kind of explanation, that kind of analysis having any basis to make you more complex, to make you understand any more in a higher region of life's body, forget it. Well, you should know that by now. That's why you got here fooling around with this kind of stuff. The ordinary information is not satisfying to some people. But to everybody, if for some reason their intellect could be pushed past the point of the first story, the first satisfying explanation, the first logical one, if it could be pushed, which it can't, and if it could, there'd be no reason to. But if it could be pushed, then everybody would be as dissatisfied, let us say, as you are. That they would suddenly realize that all the world's satisfying, or at least logical, reasonable explanations wouldn't hold dog do. None of them are satisfying. And I just never thought about it. All I had to do was go past the point of, well, there's no doubt. All of us here, the whole psychology department of Michigan State have studied this problem, and this man, this 40-year-old man right now, that is so pushy and so aggressive that all of you have studied and we've watched him, there's one reason he's that way. His father is here. His father admits it. Their stories coincide. As his father treated him this way all of his life. And the students, the other psychologists, humanity, your own intellect goes, God. I mean, I should have thought of that. It's so obvious, but I didn't major in psychology, but now that they pointed out, he's that way because of his father. And his father's staying there admitting it. His father was a real bastard. And the old man goes, yep, I was. And your intellect goes, God, it's great to be intellectual and well-read. And, you know, to be around people like this, that they're interested in things and will come up. I mean, I explains it. Explains what? His father made him do it. Does that sound familiar? Thousands of years ago, or some people just a few years ago, the devil made me do it. But nowadays that sounds too locked in. Because if his father, if the environment made him do it, then something can be changed. We can help him. Oh yeah? Well, wait a minute then. What made his father that way? No. Don't start that crap. Because if you start that crap, you're faced with, wait a minute, we can't do anything about that son. Of course, when really pushed, by the way, and if you want to look into a real, every now and then, somebody will be trying to sing the praises of psychology or just being intellectual and being a human being on a high spiritual, moral plane. They'll try and say, well, the hope of humanity always, of course, is our children. Because, and then what they get into gets really, really, if not sticky, rancid if you can hear it. Because they got to start mumbling, because what they're trying to say is, well, what we're going to try to do is, now we have this new information, all these new statistical flows and these charts having to do with the makeup of the human personality. What we're trying to do now is, of course, raise a whole new generation that is less psychologically and intellectually traumatized. And then they have to kind of mumble and wander off, because you couldn't let ordinary intellect say, well, wait a minute, how are you going to do that? I go, well, we've got lots of new information now. I mean, such as this 40-year-old man, we know that his problems, that is his problem being so aggressive because of his father, right? Okay. Well, of course, now we got that information, we can try and pass that along. He's got sons of his own. In fact, he's got grandchildren. They're real small, but this kind of new information, now we can make it available. That's why we need more and better education all the time. Make this information available so that that same kind of thing won't happen to his kids. Great. Exactly how are you going to do it? Well, we got to... Think about it a second. This is not an attack on education. There is nowhere to go with that. It sounds, if you don't push it any further, it sounds great. With Jesus now, we understand that it's the environmental influences of one's parents that makes or breaks, that makes either a healthy, functional, social young man or young woman or somebody who is dysfunctional. And so now we understand that, we can do something with it. By God, by God. But don't let the ordinary intellect try to push it past that and say, well, just exactly how? Just give me one example. Because what they're saying is, we're in some way going to take to the genetic line of humanity. Let's say this family right here we're talking about. In some way we're going to cut it right here and take, the 40-year-old guy's children, we're going to cut their past out of them some way. It's not just killing his father and grandfather. We're in some way going to have to get inside his nervous system, inside the whole genetic makeup of this kid. In some way we're going to say, hey kid, we understand now that the influences of your grandfather was on your father and your father was going to do it to you, but we don't want you to do that. And the kid says, great. How do we do it? There is no way. Because there is no mortal environment outside of human genetics. But that is not some sort of fatalistic statement. That's what I was saying, that both things are backwards 3D-wise, because the original one of saying the sins of the fathers, his father calls them, that sounds as though it offers hope. That now we know that, maybe we can't help this man a lot, we can help him some, but at least we can help the next generation. You got to be intellectually dead, that is ordinary, to stop there. But it sounds just right. Well, now that we understand that, now that there is no longer any doubt as to the influence of one's psychological environment, like your parents, on you. But now that we understand that, now of course we suspected it and Freud got it rolling, but we had a good part now of the whole 20th century. There's now no doubt. So by God, the major breakthroughs, the kind of good, more wholesome, clean, intellectually healthy life that we can encourage in the next generation. Great. That just sounds wonderful. Exactly how do you propose to do that? Just give me one example. Just short. Just how? Because what they're saying is we're going to take this other generation, this little kid here, and in some way we're going to just pluck him out of the life of life. We're going to cut him out of the genetic strain of humanity. It's just all impossible. You just can't go any further with it. And so whereas it sounds on the surface as though this is offering some promise, as opposed to me hinting that, which of course is not the limits of it, but of hinting as opposed to the question between environment or heredity, there is no environment. Your environment, everybody's environment, is everybody else's heredity, if that helps you get going. But for me to make the statement, if I just went ahead and said, all right, everything is genetic, that's it, which I'm not saying, but if I said that, then that would sound as though, wait a minute, there is the dead-end statement. If that's a fact, we're all locked in, we're all done for. But it's just the opposite in the 3D world, that if you can see that yourself, that is the only place for any hope for you, the only possibility, because if you see that, then you see that what you believed before, what everybody else believes, is the dead end. That it's not either or, but what is accepted now as being local reality, as being the satisfying explanation, all you got to do is go one step further, one word past it, change the period at the first satisfying analyzation of it, change that period to a comma, and just go to the next generation. Like, all right, that's why he's hostile because of his father. Take away the period and make it a comma. He's hostile because of his father, but why was his father hostile? Then there's the dead end, because you suddenly realize this is indeed an intellectual house of mirrors. And once you look at one mirror and it seems as though your intellect and everybody else says, well, all right, here's the answer to that, and you look and you think, it's true. But then you just step over here and you realize it's bouncing off behind you and it's just going everywhere. And then you realize I am disoriented. There is no one mirror that I can finally stop and this mirror says, well, the answer is blah. And you go, oh, good. You think that until you shift your position, and it is indeed just mirrors bouncing back and forth the same image. That is what is unsatisfying. But the encouragement should be that once you can begin to see past that, you realize that this is a supreme jump in my own chemistry, that I can now see such as this. Well, we got 4 minutes left, and it's nobody's particular problem or business, but I'd say that was really what we've done in 53.5 minutes was really my opening 2 or 3 minutes, it was the opening statement. I didn't even really get going. But such is the nature of info, see? Because real info, you can squish it up, and you can stretch it out, you can blow it up, and you can let the air out, you can put it in your pocket, you can save it. Or you can lay it down and watch it rot. Let's see if I can look off thoughtfully for 2 minutes to make the tape come out right. That's the only danger. Some people, when they try to look thoughtful, they go to sleep. Not naming any names. Not making any confessions. Good night, y'all.